When you release someone who neglects you, strength quietly awakens, choosing distance over desperation, proclaims your boundaries louder than pleas. That decisive silence teaches self-belief, illustrating independence as irresistible people sense confidence like heat. Absence amplifies that radiating. Internal detachment isn't cruelty. It's compassionate self-preservation, honoring your emotional moving away repositions you center stage. No longer orbiting your calendar refills with personal dreams, shutting doors on draining in reclaiming evenings once spent anxiously waiting. You rediscover forgotten. The world mirrors your renewed dignity, offering opportunities matching your suddenly peripheral, senses unfamiliar cold where warmth once reliably space unsettles complacency. Routine shrivels when its heartbeat vanishes overnight. He expected eternal access, assumed your presence as unquestioned household. Now unanswered messages echo. Every checkmark, a reminder of shifting. Your deliberate non-response forces him to audit. Actions previously questions arise inside his mind. What allowed her to walk those reflections catalyze growth in him, but primarily liberate you. Ownership of choice redefines the story. Transforming heartbreak into personal silence becomes your spokesperson, articulating worth through dignified non-participation. Paradoxically, restraint shouts louder than confrontation, inviting introspection instead of the void, communicates lessons lectures never could. Because experience personalizes a woman unattached to validation, emits the rarest magnetic frequency. Men are biologically wired to pursue challenge, not guarantee. Within your calm exit upgrades you instantly from convenience to coveted. He starts replaying shared moments, filtering them through uncertainty of memory, edits ordinary experiences into highlight reels. Once repetition becomes psychology, names this valuation shift. Scarcity effect. You embody its letting go, manufactures scarcity ethically, based on genuine self-protective authentic withdrawal, differs entirely from games. Intentions focus on healing. He senses authenticity through consistency. Your absence matches previously declared that congruence produces credibility, and credibility magnetizes interest faster than power grows internally before appearing externally. Releasing him waters that you begin devoting mornings to meditation, workouts, or journaling. Neglected, each completed task cements confidence, making external affirmation a delightful. The more complete you feel solo, the less supremacy others. Freedom from desperate clinging transforms posture, tone, decision-making, and friends notice radiant calm. Strangers mirror it with respectful engagement. Opportunities aligned with your passion arise because clarity streamlines previously career project. Accelerate, hobbies resurface, and new social circles organically. Self-investment becomes addictive, replenishing energy previously drained by uncertainty. Energy cannot lie. He perceives your upgraded aura across social digital footprints become subtle proof of transformation. He can neither captured sunset during solo travel, hints at chapters. He a post-workout glow selfie communicates discipline, surpassing nostalgic sentimentality. Shared friends relay stories of your enthusiasm, not accounts of. He scrolls silently, realizing growth occurred during his absence. Not that revelation unsettles ego, birthing unfamiliar desire to re-qualify. Suddenly, he contemplates texts drafted then deleted, fearing inadequate impact. Your boundaries have recalibrated communication terms. Generic apologies feel embarrassingly. His imagination crafts scenarios involving your laughter beside someone equally. Thoughts spiral as he understands competition exists where monopoly once. Meanwhile, your evenings feel lighter. Playlists shift from melancholic to dopamine, floods organically through accomplishments rather than unpredictable message pings. Your support network deepens as you invest actively in reciprocal. Laughter becomes louder, meals tastier, and sleep uninterrupted by late. This internal revolution rewrites cellular memory, literally changing baseline stress. Confidence influences posture, shoulders square, eye contact steadies. Voice lowers, the body carries stories. Yours begins narrating sovereignty independent of that narrative. Commands respect before words form, filtering interactions at new suitors approach, recognizing vibrancy rare among those still clinging in. Witnessing alternative interest, he realizes permission To return is letting go teaches him consequences, but teaches you agency. The society conditions women to equate perseverance with virtue. Even amid yet selective disengagement represents higher virtue. Loyalty to self-worth. This loyalty sets precedent, informing future decisions across every life. Career negotiations mirror newfound firmness. Compensation aligns closer to delivered. Family boundaries strengthen, reducing emotional labor previously shouldered without acknowledgement. Time becomes currency. You invest rather than spend, expecting meaningful habits refine, replacing doom scrolling with reading or learning. Marketable personal brand evolves toward excellence. Reflected through actions, not declarative, he watches transformation from sidelines, now outsider. Progress he as power balance shifts, guilt may surface, whispering accusations of remember. Compassion without limits converts to self-betrayal. Boundaries preserve, releasing someone unaligned isn't abandonment. It's faith that both deserve. You trust his capacity to grow independently, free from enabling that trust respects his autonomy, positioning you peer, not clandestine when growth replaces resentment. Future interaction remains possible without compromising should paths cross again. You can meet eye to eye. Until then, distance functions as fertile soil, nurturing lessons neither. Absence honors shared history by refusing to dilute it, and you continue forward. Not hardened but clarified regarding reciprocal. Psychologists explain attachment disruption as catalyst for introspection and behavioral avoidant. Tendencies often crumble under experiential evidence of potential. Permanent, once dismissive strategies deprive him of comfort. Necessity demands emotional. He confronts vulnerabilities previously masked by your unwavering, unconditional availability. The journey is his alone. Your responsibility ended when you observing from afar. You maintain empathy without reopening doors prematurely. Empathy acknowledges humanity. Boundaries protect progress. Together they form mature growth flourishes in this nuanced balance. Preventing regression into familiar, you choose observation over intervention. Reinforcing internal promise of self, the promise becomes principle, guiding relationship. Long after current chapters, eventually understanding dawns. Letting go was an act of profound love for yourself came first, enabling genuine love for him by refusing half-hearted connection. You modeled standard, inspiring mutual. He may return transformed, or another partner may meet you. Either outcome affirms decision. Flourishing demanded space, and space required. The narrative finishes not with reunion, but with sovereign alignment. Power resides in choice. You exercised it, rewriting identity beyond every sunrise. Henceforth reflects empowerment earned through disciplined release. Not that empowerment becomes legacy, influencing friends, family, and future generations, and began the moment you decided to let go gracefully. A man cannot begin to miss you if you're always within reach, emotionally or physically. When you're constantly responding, checking in, or staying connected, he never feels the gap. He assumes you're there not because he values it, but because it's routine. But the moment you stop showing up, the emotional landscape begins to shift. He no longer hears the ping of your name lighting up his phone. The silence becomes deafening because it disrupts his emotional equilibrium. Your absence removes the cushion he once leaned on without thinking. Suddenly, he's left alone with his thoughts, and your absence becomes loud. That's when clarity begins, not when you're present, but when you've pulled away. People rarely appreciate what's always available, but they notice the missing piece. Emotional clarity doesn't strike in a moment of comfort, it strikes in stillness. It hits when there's no distraction, no fallback, no comforting voice saying, "I'm here." He starts to wonder where you are, what you're thinking, who you're becoming. That curiosity leads to internal dialogue he never entertained when you were around. The questions hit. Why did she pull away? Why did I not see this coming? He starts to examine his own behavior, not because you asked him to, but because silence demanded it. That is the genius of Space. It forces introspection through emotional consequence. You didn't have to scream, cry, or explain 1,000 times. Your quiet created a mirror, one he couldn't look away from. And in that reflection, he sees both your worth and his neglect. Every moment he reaches for his phone and doesn't find you there, it deepens. Each day you stay silent, you become more of a mystery, less of a guarantee. He starts replaying your last conversations, now listening for what he missed the first time. Little things you said that he brushed off begin to make sense. Your tone, your patience, your frustration, all echo differently when you're no longer explaining them. He starts to piece together how much you were holding together, and for the first time, he feels the emotional weight you quietly carried. What was once ignored becomes invaluable in hindsight because now it's gone. Silence isn't empty, it's loaded with emotional consequence if you let it speak. And that's when he truly begins to understand your value through loss, not proximity. The brain begins to idealize what's been taken away, especially when it feels self-inflicted. He may not have said goodbye, but he knows it was his inaction that caused the distance. Regret creeps in, not just because you're gone, but because he realizes he could have done more. He begins comparing you to everyone else, but no one has your depth. He may try distractions, rebounds, casual conversations, but nothing hits the same because you weren't just another woman. You were emotionally invested, thoughtful, real. The difference becomes stark in your absence, especially when others don't match your standard. The silence reminds him daily that he had something valuable, and let it slip. That awareness is heavier than any text or confrontation you could have delivered. It haunts him gently, but relentlessly, pulling him into the emotional truth. Space creates scarcity, and scarcity creates value. It's human psychology. We value what we fear losing, what we can't predict, what we can't replace. When you pull away, he can't be sure what you're feeling, what you're planning. That unpredictability forces him to emotionally engage, often for the first time. He wonders, has she moved on? Is there someone else? Did I matter at all? Those questions stir something that comfort never could, emotional urgency. And urgency is where change begins. It's the birthplace of pursuit and recognition. You didn't manipulate him, you simply let the natural consequences of neglect play out. That's the beauty of silence. It lets him do the emotional math himself. And often the answer hits him like a wave. She mattered more than I admitted. The more time passes, the more he reimagines the reality he once took for granted. Memories become sweeter, your smile becomes softer in his mind, and your presence larger. Time adds its moments, polishing them, romanticizing them in his emotional archive. Now that he can't just reach out and get a reply, he starts to feel the loss. Even the mundane things, your laugh, your texts, your advice, become gold. This isn't fantasy, it's his mind reconciling absence with emotional realization. Your decision to pull away didn't create false value, it revealed the real one. He didn't see it because he was emotionally asleep, lulled by your constant presence. But now he's wide awake and your distance is the alarm clock, and in the silence he hears everything he once ignored. He may try to reach out, lightly at first, testing the waters, not with depth, but with safe, familiar lines. Hey, how have you been? But you know the difference now between curiosity and commitment, and when you don't respond or only offer minimal engagement, it stings. He starts realizing that silence wasn't a phase, it was a boundary. That your absence wasn't punishment, it was self-protection. You're not playing games, you're living life healed and whole, and that realization scares him more than anything. He might have lost you for good. That's when the fall begins, not into panic, but into truth. Truth that he never truly valued what was freely given until it was gone. You didn't have to cut him down to size or beg for him to see your worth. You simply stepped back and let time and space do what words couldn't. And now, Every moment he doesn't hear from you becomes a moment of reflection. His emotional landscape is changing not because of conflict, but because of contrast. Contrast between what was and what now is, between connection and distance, and contrast creates clarity, sudden, painful, undeniable clarity. You were consistent, loving, generous, and your withdrawal proves it even more. He sees the difference between your presence and your silence, and the message is clear. And though he may try to undo the past, the shift has already happened. The emotional clarity he now feels is the exact clarity you had when you let go. He falls harder now because he's seeing you without the filter of assumption. Without your constant availability, he has to evaluate your worth without convenience. He no longer sees you through the lens of routine, but through the lens of loss. And that lens sharpens every detail: your kindness, your patience, your presence. The woman he once overlooked is now the woman he can't stop thinking about. But by the time this clarity hits, you've evolved into someone even stronger. Not bitter, not closed off, but intentional, empowered, and emotionally self-sufficient. And that version of you is even more powerful than the one he knew. You didn't change to get him back, you changed to get yourself back. And now he falls harder because he finally sees who you truly are. When you stop trying to prove your worth to someone, everything changes. You no longer move from a place of desperation, but from deep self-trust. He starts to notice that the energy has shifted. You're no longer performing. There's no more over-explaining, no more chasing, no more trying to win him over. You become calm, composed, and detached from his validation, and that confuses him. He's used to the version of you that tried harder, gave more, and waited longer, but now you're simply living, without needing his attention to feel valuable. That shift is magnetic, because confidence creates contrast, and contrast commands attention. You stand out because you stopped standing in line, hoping he'd pick you. Instead, you walked away and made room for someone who doesn't need convincing. He starts to compare the woman you were to the woman you've become. Before, you were constantly available, always trying to show how much you cared. Now, you're selective with your energy, and your silence is more powerful than words. He doesn't get the same responses, the same attention, or the same emotional comfort. You're not cold, you're clear, you're not mean, you're mature. You no longer feed into games, arguments, or passive attention seeking. The moment you stopped fighting for someone who wasn't fighting for you, everything shifted. That contrast, the old you vs. the new you, makes him reevaluate everything. He starts wondering what changed, why the connection feels different, why you feel distant. But it's not distance, it's evolution, and he's no longer at the center of it. When you were trying to prove your worth, he had all the emotional control. He knew you'd text back. He knew you'd stay, no matter how inconsistent he was. He took your effort for granted because it never came with conditions. But now, your energy is no longer free, it's earned, not assumed. He starts feeling the tension of emotional uncertainty, something you used to carry alone. Suddenly, he's the one wondering, waiting, questioning where he stands. That flip doesn't happen because you punished him. It happens because you prioritized you. And when a woman chooses herself over proving her value to a man, everything changes. She stops chasing clarity from someone else and becomes her own source of it. And that clarity is blinding. It exposes what he failed to see when she was still trying. He might scroll through your pictures, remembering how secure your love once felt. But now those pictures carry a different energy, one of independence, not attachment. He sees the difference in your smile, your posture, your presence. You're not trying to be noticed anymore. You're already whole, and that's when it hits him. The you he once overlooked is now out of reach. Because a woman who knows her worth doesn't wait for someone to realize it. She lets go, she elevates, she stops trying to convince someone to choose her, and he feels that shift even through a screen or silence. What used to feel predictable now feels rare, and what feels rare becomes desirable. But by the time he understands this, you've already started a new chapter. Confidence doesn't beg, it doesn't chase. It doesn't explain repeatedly, it simply exists powerfully and unapologetically. That confidence becomes a mirror reflecting his own emotional immaturity back at him. He realizes that while you were growing, he was coasting. And now, your growth makes him feel unqualified to re-enter your world. You never said a word, but the way you carry yourself says everything. You don't need his presence to feel whole anymore. That's what stuns him most. You stopped proving yourself and started proving your potential to yourself. That self-validation becomes your glow, your aura, your unshakable presence. And it's in that glow that he sees the value he once dismissed. He starts to question how he could have misread the situation so badly. He thought you'd always be there, always reaching out, always proving your love, but now you're gone. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You've detached in the most elegant way, without anger, without drama, without revenge. That elegance burns deeper than any emotional outburst ever could, because he knows you didn't leave to hurt him, you left to heal yourself. And healing without bitterness is the most intimidating thing to witness. It forces him to see that you didn't lose. He did. Because while he stayed the same, you leveled up in silence, and now he falls into reflection while you rise without apology. You once thought proving your worth would win his heart, but it only drained yours. Now, withholding that effort doesn't make you cold. It makes you conscious. You no longer invest where there's no return, and that's the new standard. That standard makes him look inward, asking why he let someone like you slip away. And the answer is always the same. He didn't see the value when it was freely given. Because effort without boundaries teaches others they can receive without reciprocating. But the moment you stopped offering without return, you rewrote the rules. Now he's playing a game he no longer controls, and the stakes feel real, because it's no longer about attention. It's about access, and access to you is no longer guaranteed. That reality humbles him more than anything your words ever could. Your transformation isn't loud, but it's impossible to ignore. It shows up in your energy, your decisions, your standards. You're no longer willing to shrink yourself to be more digestible to him. You're not dimming your light to make him feel comfortable in his shadows. You're embracing your power, your purpose, and your peace, and that peace is louder than any confrontation, any closure, any final word. He may never say it out loud, but he feels the void your strength left behind. He feels it when he meets women who don't match your depth or maturity. He feels it when his old habits no longer bring the same comfort. And he falls harder because the version of you he took for granted no longer exists. He remembers the version of you that stayed, that tried, that held everything together. But now he's left with the memory of a woman who walked away without needing him to chase. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not your pain, but your power. You became the one that got away, not because you left, but because you grew. You stopped waiting for someone to value you and started valuing yourself. That self-respect became your foundation, and your silence became your shield. And while he might reach out eventually, hoping to rekindle what once was will never be again, because you're no longer the same. And it all started the moment you stopped trying to prove your worth. From that moment on, he started falling harder, and you started rising faster. Men often fall harder after you let them go because you give them the gift of perspective. When you were always around, he couldn't see the full picture. You were too close. He mistook your loyalty for permanence, your effort for routine, your love for obligation. But the moment you removed yourself, the truth started speaking louder than your presence ever did. He began to feel the silence in between moments where your voice used to live. He started to notice the absence of your encouragement, your softness, your care. Your presence once cushioned his emotional voids. Now those voids echo with awareness. The contrast between who you were and what he now feels is painful and sharp. You gave him consistency, and now he sits in the chaos of his own inconsistency. That's when the fall begins, not because you forced it, but because the truth finally had space. Letting someone go doesn't mean you gave up on love. It means you gave up on begging. You stopped chasing clarity from someone who wasn't willing to meet you halfway. You realized that love without respect is just emotional labor that goes unnoticed. And in stepping away, you held up a mirror he couldn't look away from. It's in your absence that he starts to see how much you really held together. He reflects on all the times you stayed, even when you had every reason to leave. Now that you're no longer there, he's forced to carry the weight you once bore silently. Every day without you becomes a reminder of how good he had it and didn't know. He starts retracing his steps, wishing he had listened better, appreciated more, responded differently. But you're not there to receive the apology, because you've moved past needing it. Perspective deepens when you no longer provide the emotional safety net. He may try to fill the gap with noise, with distractions, with someone else. But nothing hits the same because nothing carries your energy, your patience, your strength. He's left comparing every connection to you, but no one else can fill your space. It's not just that he misses you, it's that he realizes what he lost was rare. In hindsight, your boundaries, your standards, even your silence become more attractive. What once felt demanding now feels dignified, and what once felt routine now feels sacred. He used to think your love was guaranteed, now he sees it was a privilege. And privileges, once lost, carry a sting that lingers in the quietest moments. That's the power of perspective. It turns your departure into his deepest lesson. At first, he may not admit the shift, even to himself. He might brush it off, pretend it doesn't matter, stay emotionally avoidant. But perspective isn't immediate. It builds in layers, slowly and powerfully. One day, it's a memory of you laughing at his jokes. The next, it's silence when he needs support. The routine texts that no longer come, the warmth that no longer cushions his cold moments. It's the difference between emotional security and emotional uncertainty. And he now lives in the latter. He didn't just lose you. He lost the version of himself that felt safe in your love. And the longer you stay gone, the more obvious that becomes. Each moment without you becomes a slow unveiling of what he once took for granted. And every unveiling becomes a reason to fall, deeper, harder, and far too late. Your growth becomes a lens he can't ignore, especially as time passes. He sees your glow up, not just in photos, but in presence, in peace, in power. You're not bitter, you're better, not because of him, but because of you. And that evolution amplifies his sense of loss tenfold. He thought you'd crumble or chase or shrink into the background, but you didn't. Instead, you became someone even more grounded, radiant, and untouchable. He expected your exit to be temporary, but your silence became permanent elevation. Now he watches from afar as you thrive in the freedom he never knew how to honor. And what hurts most isn't just that you left, it's that you're not looking back. Your life kept moving, and his heart stayed stuck in the chapter he mishandled. The more you rise, the harder he falls, because now he sees the gap between who you are and who he was. He can't escape the contrast, your clarity versus his confusion, your growth versus his stagnation. Even if he wanted to step back in, he knows he no longer fits the mold. You're no longer accessible to the man he used to be. You require a new standard, and that standard forces him to face what he avoided all along, personal responsibility. Letting you go didn't just create regret, it created a reckoning with his emotional immaturity, his lack of effort, his shallow presence. Now your name carries weight not because you're bitter, but because you became better. He thought your value was negotiable, now he sees it was irreplaceable, and perspective carves that truth deeper with every passing day. He starts dreaming up scenarios where he could get another chance. Where he says all the right things, makes all the right changes, becomes what you needed. But deep down, He knows those dreams don't match reality anymore, because you're not standing in the same place, waiting. You're building, living, expanding. The time he took to recognize your worth is the same time you used to reclaim it. Now, even if he returned, the version of you he seeks no longer exists. That version was patient, hopeful, willing to settle for breadcrumbs. But the woman you've become is nourished, whole, and unwilling to beg for love. He falls harder now because the version of you he fell for is now outgrown, and he wasn't ready for the woman you were becoming while he stayed comfortable. Even if he finds someone else, your shadow will stretch across his memories, because he'll remember the depth, the warmth, the rare emotional presence you gave so freely. That kind of love doesn't just disappear, it imprints. It lingers, it echoes in quiet corners. He'll try to recreate it, but replicas never feel the same. What he thought was replaceable turned out to be one of a kind, and that realization hits harder than any goodbye ever could, not because you asked for it, but because the silence revealed it. He thought your eggs, it was temporary, a test, a tactic, but it was transformation, and now he sees that letting you go didn't give him freedom, it gave him a front row seat to your evolution.